pack your things and get out of my house." My mother didn't yell it. She said it the way you'd tell someone to take out the trash. Flat, final. Like the decision had already been made before she even opened her mouth. I was 31 years old, standing in the kitchen I'd grown up in, holding a mug of coffee I hadn't gotten to drink yet. My stepfather was sitting at the table behind her. He didn't look up from his newspaper. "Mom, you heard me." I set the mug down, carefully, because if I didn't do something with my hands right then, I don't know what I would have done with them. My name is Savannah Cole, and that Sunday morning in October was the last time I stood in that kitchen as someone's daughter. Let me back up. My mother remarried when I was 12. My stepfather, Walter, came with opinions about everything. How to sit at the dinner table, how to speak to adults, what a woman's life should look like by 30. He never hit anyone. He never had to. Walter's particular brand of cruelty was quieter than that. It was the long pause before he answered a question. The way he'd look at my mother after I said something, just long enough for her to catch it. The slow shake of his head that meant, "Do you see what I have to deal with?" By the time I was in high school, my mother had started borrowing his opinions like they were her own. That's how it works sometimes, in houses like ours. You don't notice it happening until one day you realize, the woman who used to braid your hair before school now speaks to you the way he taught her to. My older sister, Monica, was their success story. She married a finance guy from Connecticut at 26, had 2 kids in a house with a mudroom, and called every Sunday. Monica had done everything in the right order. Monica had never embarrassed anyone. Whenever relatives came over for Thanksgiving, Monica's life was the centerpiece of every conversation. When someone thought to ask about me, my mother would smile in a way that didn't reach her eyes and say, "Savannah is still figuring things out." I had been figuring things out for about 9 years, according to them. What they didn't know, what I had stopped trying to explain, was that I wasn't figuring anything out. I had already figured it out. I just hadn't told anyone. At 22, I'd started a small event design business out of my apartment in Nashville. Not party planning. Event design. Brand activations. Experiential marketing. The kind of work where a company hires you to turn an empty warehouse into something their customers will remember for 10 years. I was good at it in a way that surprised even me. The first year was impossible. The second year was hard. By the third year, I had a team. By the fifth, I had a waiting list. I never talked about it at home because the one time I tried, I was 24, sitting at this same kitchen table, telling my mother that I'd just signed my first corporate contract. Walter had looked up from his plate and said, "Event planning." Not a question. Just the words repeated back to me like they tasted bad. My mother had laughed a little. "It's a very crowded field, honey." After that, I stopped bringing it up. By the time I was 31, my company had designed events for 3 Fortune 500 brands. We'd been written up in Event Marketer magazine twice. I had 14 full-time employees and a converted warehouse studio in East Nashville that I'd renovated myself over the course of 8 months. I owned it outright. I was, by any reasonable measure, successful. My parents thought I was a freelancer who made centerpieces. The Sunday it happened, I'd been staying with them for 4 days. The farmhouse I'd recently bought outside Franklin was getting new hardwood floors installed, and rather than pay for a hotel for a week, I'd made the mistake of thinking that was a fine time to visit family. It was not a fine time to visit family. The fight started the way it always did, sideways. We were talking about Monica's oldest starting kindergarten. Somehow it turned to me. Specifically, to Walter asking when I was going to settle down. I said I was focused on my work. He asked what work. I said my company. He said, and I remember this clearly, "I don't think a hobby counts as a company, Savannah." My mother didn't correct him. Something in me just snapped loose. Not in a dramatic way. More like a thread that had been fraying for years finally pulled through. I said, calmly, that my hobby had generated more revenue last year than his salary. I said it quietly. I wasn't proud of saying it, but I said it. Walter put down his fork. The silence in that kitchen was enormous. Then my mother said, "I think you need to apologize." For what? For disrespecting this household. I stated a fact. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what your problem is? You've always thought you were better than everyone in this room. That's your father in you. That's always been your father in you." She paused. "You're selfish, you're ungrateful, and honestly, Savannah, I don't know where I went wrong with you." Walter was very still. "Pack your things," she said, "and get out of my house." I didn't cry. Not there. I walked upstairs. I put 4 days of clothes back in my bag, and I came back downstairs and picked up my car keys from the hook by the door. My mother was washing dishes with her back to me. Walter had gone back to his newspaper. I stood there for a moment, waiting, I think, for something. Some version of her that might turn around. She didn't. I left. I drove to a hotel in Brentwood and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time without turning the lights on. I'm not going to pretend that didn't hurt. It did. It hurt the way things hurt when they finally stop surprising you. Not sharply, but deep. Like a bruise you forgot was there until something pressed on it. I didn't call anyone that night. I ordered room service and answered work emails and went to sleep before 10. The next morning, I checked into the hotel for the rest of the week, moved back into my farmhouse the following Sunday, and did not contact my mother or Walter. They did not contact me. Life continued. Q4 was busy. We had a major brand activation in Chicago coming up in January. A client I'd been developing for almost 8 months, a national outdoor apparel company launching a new product line. The scope was the biggest we'd ever taken on, a 3-day experiential event at the Merchandise Mart, 15,000 square feet of custom build, a full production crew, 17 vendors I was coordinating simultaneously. My team was incredible. My operations director, a woman named Colette, who'd been with me since year 2, basically ran point while I handled the client relationship and the creative direction. I was not thinking about my mother. Then, in early December, I got a call from my sister. Monica and I were not close, but we weren't enemies either. She occupied the uncomfortable middle ground of someone who loves you, but has also spent 20 years trying not to take sides. She called to tell me that Mom had mentioned I'd left abruptly and seemed hurt. I almost laughed. I said, "Monica, she told me to leave." There was a long pause on her end. "I know," she said quietly. "I know she did. Is there something you need from me?" Another pause. "Walter's company is doing some kind of awards thing in January. Black tie. Apparently, it's a big deal. Mom mentioned they got invited to some networking event attached to it, at the Merchandise Mart in Chicago." I went very still. "I just thought you should know," Monica said. "In case it's weird." I thanked her. I hung up. Then I sat down. Of all the networking events, of all the venues in Chicago, of all the weeks in January, I thought about calling the client and asking them to change the guest list. Then I thought, why would I do that? This is my event. I built this. I'm not going to rearrange my professional life around the people who told me to get out of their kitchen. I didn't tell Colette. I didn't tell anyone on my team. I just noted it and kept working. The week of the event arrived. Setup took 2 full days. The space was transformed. Raw concrete walls covered in floor-to-soiling alpine imagery, custom lighting rigs that mimicked golden hour at elevation, interactive stations, a product experience zone. My team had spent 3 months designing. It looked like something out of a magazine. Better than that, actually. It looked like something from a dream someone had about being in the mountains. On the second evening, the networking reception began. Guests filtered in. Industry people, press, partners, corporate clients. I was stationed near the main creative installation, talking through the concept with a brand VP when I saw them. My mother came in first. She was wearing a dark blue dress I didn't recognize, and she looked good, the way she always did when she put effort into it. Walter was half a step behind her, in a suit jacket that was slightly too formal for the room. They were looking around the space with the particular expression of people who are impressed, but don't entirely want to show it. They hadn't seen me yet. A member of my team, a coordinator named James, who'd been with us 8 months and was very good at his job, approached them with the warmth and efficiency I'd trained into every person on my staff. He checked their names, handed them programs, gestured toward the welcome station. I watched my mother take one of the programs. I watched her open it. I watched her face change. The program featured a letter from our studio, standard practice for activations at this scale. At the top of the letter was my name, my title, a photo from a press piece we'd done in the fall. Taken in the warehouse studio, the one where the light comes through the skylights and hits the concrete floor just right. She looked up from the program very slowly. We made eye contact across about 40 feet of branded, beautifully lit event space that I had built from the ground up. I don't know what I expected to feel in that moment. Triumphant. Vindicated. Something with edges to it. Instead, I mostly just felt tired. Not in a bad way. In the way you feel tired when something is finally over. I excused myself from the conversation I was in, smoothed my blazer, and walked toward them. Walter saw me first. The color shifted in his face. Savannah. My mother's voice came out strange, smaller than usual. Hi, Mom. I kept my voice even. Professional. This was my professional environment, and I intended to remain professional in it. Walter. He said nothing. He was looking around the space, then back at me. My mother said, You did all of this? My team did. I directed it. She was still holding the program. She looked down at it again, then back up at me. I didn't know. I know you didn't, Savannah. I'm working right now. I said it gently, not harshly. But I'm glad you're here. The experience is designed to be immersive, so please take your time with the installations. James can help you if you need anything. I gestured back toward the coordinator. There's a reception starting in about 20 minutes on the east side of the floor. My mother stared at me. She had the look of someone trying to find their footing on ice. We should talk, she said. We should, I agreed. But not tonight. Then my name was called from across the room. The brand VP needed me for something. I touched my mother's arm, once, briefly. Then I walked back to work. I won't pretend that the rest of that evening was easy. Something about seeing her holding that program. Something about the look on her face. Sat with me even while I was smiling at clients and coordinating the last hour of the event. I'm not made of stone. She's still my mother. Whatever else she is, she's still that. But I also didn't fall apart. I got through the evening. The event was, by every measure, a success. The client was thrilled. My team was exhausted and proud. We broke down at midnight, and I stayed until the last cable was coiled. My mother texted me the next morning. She said she was still in Chicago for one more day. She asked if we could meet for coffee. I stared at the text for a long time. Then I said yes. Not because I owed her anything, but because I wanted to. We met at a cafe near the hotel she was staying at, a small place on Randolph Street with good light and terrible parking. Walter was not with her. I noticed that immediately. She was already sitting when I got there, both hands around a coffee cup, and she looked like she hadn't slept well. I sat down across from her. A server came. I ordered a black coffee and waited. I've been trying to figure out what to say to you since last night, she started. Take your time, me. Something in her face was different, softer, or maybe just more honest. How long? I knew what she meant. The business has been running for 9 years. It's been profitable for 7. She closed her eyes for a second. And you never told us. I tried to tell you, once. You and Walter laughed. I said it without anger. It was just the truth. After that, I stopped bringing it up. She didn't argue with that. She couldn't. Walter isn't. He isn't always easy, she said, which was the closest she had ever come to criticizing him out loud. I know. I've let him. She stopped. Started again. I don't think I've always been fair to you. That one landed somewhere quiet and deep, the way a true thing does when it's said out loud for the first time. I didn't rush to fill the silence. What you've built, she said. Last night, that whole space, the way your team looked at you. Her voice went careful. I didn't know that was you. I should have known that was you. I looked at my coffee. You never asked. She nodded slowly. I know. We sat there for a while. The cafe filled up around us. Someone behind me was talking about a flight delay. Someone's kid was laughing at the counter. Life, operating normally on all sides. I'm not asking you to forget what I said, my mother said finally. Or what Walter said. I know we don't get to just. I know it doesn't work like that. No, I agreed. It doesn't. But I am asking if we can start somewhere. She turned her coffee cup in her hands. Even if it's just somewhere small. I thought about the kitchen, the mug I'd set down so carefully. Her back turned while I picked up my keys. I thought about how I'd driven to that hotel and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. I thought about the 14 people on my team. The way Colette had hugged me after the event last night. The warehouse studio, with the light coming through the skylights. I thought about how none of that, not one piece of it, had come from anyone's approval. Not theirs. Not anyone's. I'm not ready to pretend last October didn't happen, I said. And I'm not ready to sit in the same room as Walter like everything is fine. She nodded. But yeah. I looked at her. We can start somewhere small. She exhaled. It wasn't relief, exactly. More like the sound of someone who has been bracing for something and is slowly learning to let go of it. We stayed for another hour. We talked about Monica's kids. We talked about the farmhouse I was renovating. My mother asked careful questions about my work, the kind of questions she clearly hadn't known she needed to ask until now. I answered them. Not defensively, just honestly. When we left, she hugged me on the sidewalk. It was a little stiff. The way things are when they're starting over and everyone knows it. I hugged her back. I walked to my car. I sat for a moment before starting the engine. I wasn't happy in the uncomplicated way, but I wasn't unhappy either. I was something more useful than either of those things. Steady, I think. Clear. I started the engine and pulled onto Randolph Street and headed back toward the merchandise mart, where my team was doing final cleanup. Colette was there when I arrived. She handed me a coffee without being asked and said the client had already sent a follow-up email. They wanted to talk about a second activation in the spring. I pulled up the email. Read it twice. Then I wrote back, said I'd love to discuss it, and asked what they had in mind. There's a version of this story where last night was about my mother. Finally seeing what she should have seen years ago. And I understand why that version is satisfying. I won't pretend I don't. But the version I keep coming back to, the one that actually feels true, is that last night was just another Tuesday. In a business I built myself. One decision at a time, in a city I chose, surrounded by people who showed up because they believed in the work. My mother walking in was a footnote. An unexpected one. But still. The most important thing that happened in that room last night wasn't the look on her face when she figured it out. It was the event itself. 15,000 square feet of something we made from nothing. That's the part I'll remember.